Give me a second, I'll be back. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm bringing you an introduction to my 2024 Pan Those Eyeshadows. This project was originally created by Alexy, who I'll have linked down below, and this year I've also decided to utilize the prompts created by Laney, who I'll also have linked down below, as well as the link to the prompts list. I personally am going to be using the list without the double ups. So there is about 86 prompts on this list. So this year I have decided to work on 4 eyeshadows at a time, and I'm also going to be bringing in a little side project as part of this project, but we'll discuss that a little bit later in this video. So like I said, I am using the prompts by Laney. So I took all those prompts and put them into the Tiny Decisions app. I'll also have a link to that app down in the box below as well. And as you know, I utilize my phone to film. So I selected these products pre-filming, but I did record my screen while doing so. So I'll have that come up over here. And the first prompt was a yellow matte. So I decided to pull out my LA Splash Presents Classic Horror palette. You will know this palette from my Beauty A to Z from last year. I'll have that linked up in the cards. But from that palette, I decided to pull in this shade over here. This is the shade Toxic, and it is a very, very bright yellow shade. Let me give you a swatch. That is it just there. You'll know from my Beauty A to Z that I worked on this shade Zombie for the entirety of last year, and it actually took me a crazy amount of uses to hit pan. I say crazy, that's probably a bit dramatic, but it was something like 70 or 80 uses. And I imagine I'm going to have the same issue with this shade Toxic, but that's okay. At this point, I'm not yet sure if I'm going to have a use goal as well as a hit pan goal, or if I'm just going to stick with a hit pan goal. Please let me know down in the comments what you think I should do. But like I said, for a yellow matte, we're going to be working on Toxic from LA Splash. The next prompt was a transition shade. Surprisingly, this was actually a hard prompt because I have quite a lot of shadows that I would traditionally call transition shades, those light brown type shades in my Pan That palette. So I ended up deciding to pull out this W7 Total Eclipse palette. This is the shades inside the palette. So I ended up deciding to go with this shade right here, which is called Oracle, and it's kind of like a dusty pink shade. Let me swatch that out for you. Maybe a light dusty pink. That's it right there. Let me actually do a double swatch. I think it's not showing up the best on camera. There we go. That's it right there. So this is the shade Oracle, and that's what I'm pulling in from my W7 palette for a transition shade. Then we got the prompt, a shadow you want to pan. And I was a bit unsure because if you see my plan to pan video, I have that linked up in the cards. I had a shadow specifically that I wanted to use up in 2024, but that shade already has pan in it. So because Pan Those Eyeshadows is more about hitting pan rather than using up product, I was a little bit unsure of what I wanted to do for that. But I ended up actually pulling out an old palette. This is my MCoBeauty Just Peachy palette. You'll recognize this as the palette I did my Dude You Panned My Battleship game with Jalon. I'll have both that video, my recap video of that series, down in the description as well as in the cards, as well as a link to Jalon if you'd like to check out her channel. But I've only got 2 shades in here, this one and this one, that are yet to have pan. So I made the decision to pull this shade in here. They don't have names in it. It does have a bit of a dip, so I'm hoping that will make it a bit easier. And it is kind of an orangey brown, I guess. And that is it right there. So I'm pulling that one in from my MCoBeauty palette, this one just here, for a shadow I would like to pan. Then the last prompt I pulled is a shadow that starts with the letter F. And once again, I went to another W7 palette. This is my Whatever Totally Random palette. Let me get this little strip out the way here. This is what this palette looks like. And I decided to pull this shimmery purple in. This is in the shade Fake ID. And it's just a gorgeous light shimmery purple. That is it right there. That is a gorgeous color. So I decided to bring that one in as well for the letter F. So these are the 4 shades I'm bringing in for my Pan Those Eyeshadows color story. I've decided to go with 4 shadows each time rather than 5, which I've done previously in the past, because with my Pan That palette, my Baby Pan That palette, my Doogie Pan My Battleship project, I just thought that trying to incorporate more shadows would be more hassle than it's worth. I've also discovered over my time of doing Pan Those Eyeshadows and other eyeshadow projects, which I previously discussed in my eyes project, which I'll have down below for you to check out. I have the issue that when I do an eyeshadow project, I only focus on the eyeshadows that are in projects. So I know that other panners, especially Emily from Emily and Max, who will have a link down below, if they put an eyeshadow from a palette in a project, she then goes and uses all the shadows in that pan, or uses other shadows in that palette to make looks out of, etc. But that is not something that I personally do. It's almost like I feel like I don't want to waste an eyeshadow, a spot on my eyes, for a eyeshadow that's not in a project. So I don't really do that at all, which does mean that I end up with palettes that have an eyeshadow that has pan in it and then no other use in that palette at all. So what I've decided to do this year is each month I am going to pick a palette to be my focus palette. And my goal will be once a week to create a look with that palette that only uses shadows from that palette, which I can then discuss the looks, etc. in my monthly updates. So the first palette I've decided to pull in as my focus palette is my Beauty Bay Dark Fantasy palette. As you know, this is the palette I'm currently using in my Dude You Pan My Battleship game that I'm playing against Samantha, which I'll have linked down below as well as up in the cards. Oops, if I can open this up. And I guess, spoiler alert, though I don't have tons of use as of yet, this is what my palette is currently looking like. This is a gorgeous palette, and because this palette is in that game, I figured I might as well start off by using this as my focus palette and get a full use out of this palette once a month until the next update. I am currently actually wearing a couple shades from this palette on my eyes today. I'm wearing Slime, Encrypted and Machine on my eyes currently, and I really do enjoy this palette. So I'm looking forward to taking the shadows that are in here and creating some fun looks with them. So just to recap, I have 4 shadows for my Pan Those Eyeshadows. That goal is to hit pan on each one of these eyeshadows before I roll them out. And then I have a focus palette for the month. This month it is the Beauty Bay Dark Fantasy palette, where I'll be using that palette alone once a week to create a complete eye look. I hope that all makes sense. So please let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, especially any suggestions on palettes that you would like to see me use as my focus palette. But until next time, I'm Verity. This was the introduction to my Pan Those Eyeshadows 2024. And now to the outro.